Sandra, it's great to have you here.
Es un honor, always a pleasure.
You know, I was reading your book, and obviously before reading the book, I read the title, and it says, of course, A House of My Own. And then immediately I thought of Virginia Woolf. I thought of a room of one's own. And then the idea that you needed a house to be yourself.
Yes.
How important was that house in Chicago?
Well, you know, I grew up with 8 other people in little tiny apartments, crowded with no bedroom of my own, and nobody had their own bathroom. We all shared it. And when I was in middle school, we finally moved to a house that became the model for my first book, House on Mungo Street. But that still wasn't a house of my own. I still had a room that had the door open, and next to me was my mother and father sleeping. I had to stay up late at night like a vampire, my father said, so I could have privacy. And I just, I didn't want to do anything evil. I just wanted to think and imagine a life for myself, which I couldn't do with all the noise.
In part of the book, I found really interesting when there's that moment in which you decide that you found your voice. And I think it's a beautiful moment. And when you realize, as you wrote, that you were different.
Yes.
What was that realization? How did it happen?
Well, I think for me and for many people who feel other in the country they're born in, we're always asked, for our papers in a way. Where do you come from? What's that accent? Or why do you talk like that? We're always asked for our spiritual papers in a way, even if we're born and have lived in the United States 13 generations. So there's always that doubt that we're not the authentic American when they talk about America.
You say, in the book, you talk a beautiful moment in which you see Carlos Fuentes for the first time and his energy. I met Carlos Fuentes and he was a fantastic figure, jumping to the stage. It created such an impression on you. But also there's another person that really had a big impact in your life, Luis Omar Salinas.
Yes.
He described himself as a Chicano poet.
Yes.
And I was thinking, did you have to identify yourself also as a Chicano writer?
I did when I moved to the Southwest, when I lived in Texas. My papers had to change. I could no longer say, like I did in Chicago, I'm Latina or I'm Mexican. Because as soon as I said I'm Mexican, then everyone would say, where in Mexico are you from? Yeah. And I couldn't explain that I was born in Chicago of Mexican parents, so that's when I became Chicana.
But do you still consider yourself a Chicana writer, or that has changed because
you know what I am
anymore?
Now that I have my double nationality in the U.S. and in Mexico, I am now, when I am asked, what are you? I say, estadounidense con raíces mexicanas. I'm from the U.S. with Mexican roots. But in Mexico, the spirits are with you every day. And I went there to visit, and the spirits woke me up in the middle of the night, and they said, you are not your house. No, they told me, you are not your house. They didn't tell me in Spanish or English. They said it como una luz, a little light beam in my head. And I thought, who's that? It's not me.
So that's when you decided to sell the purple house in San Antonio?
Well, it was poco a poco. First I decided, I'm going to go to live in Mexico. And I'm going to maybe stay there. And everyone in the United States was like, no, you can't go and live in Mexico. It's too scary. And I thought, maybe they're right. I'll go rent a house. We'll see. And then once I was there, I said, no, I'm supposed to be here. I was sure of it because Mexico floods me with joy. Mexico me abraza. Mexico makes me feel like I belong.
Can we talk politics a little bit?
Please.
Are you upset with Donald Trump? You said that Donald Trump is a frightened man. What do you mean?
I said he was a male imposter because I think a real man, like Cesar Chavez said, is a man who protects the weak. And you don't have a man who's acting like a man. You just have him out there talking out of his rear end. He's not talking from any place logical except from a place of fear, a place of rage. And I don't want my leaders to make decisions from a place of rage and fear.
There's a lot of xenophobia in Europe and here in the United States.
Yes, globally, all over the world. But I lived in Paris 30 years ago, very briefly. And with this face that I have that looks like an Arab, I was not treated very well.
Really? Were you discriminated?
Yes. And I knew what it was like to live as a black person in the United States by living with this face in Paris.
If somebody listening to you right now, they say, I want to write like Sandra Cisneros, you would say?
I would tell them they need to write like themselves. They can be inspired and get courage by reading many, many writers, but essentially they need to find the things that I can't write about. What 10 things do they know that I don't know? What 10 things do they know that their brothers and sisters don't know, that no one in their town knows, no one in their profession, no one in their field? They should write from that place that makes them different from anyone else in the room. And I just finished reading your book.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because right now you're my hero. I want to put you on the altar as someone who's brave enough to stand up to the...
You would have done the same thing. Well, actually,
no, I would have thrown my shoe at Mr. Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
You would have done that?
Yeah, I think what you did was so noble and kind and generous and compassionate.
Thank you so much. Gracias, Sandra.
A ti.